Welcome to the Inner Ascent. In this episode, we explore the holographic universe, inspired by the vision of Michael Talbot. What if reality itself is not solid, but a vast hologram, an interconnected web where consciousness and matter are one? Drawing from the work of physicist David Bohm and neuroscientist Karl Pribram, we dive into the implicate order, the holographic brain, and the mysteries of nonlinear time. Prepare to expand your perception of what reality might truly be.
Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're about to plunge into a concept that will fundamentally shake your understanding of reality. Imagine for a moment that everything you perceive, every sight, sound, texture, the vastness of space, the passage of time, isn't actually out there in the way we usually think. What if it's all a projection, a grand, intricate 3D image emerging from a much simpler underlying 2D surface? And what if your very own brain is the projector, with consciousness as the ultimate observer?
It's a truly mind-bending thought, isn't it? We're stepping into the realm of what's known as the holographic universe theory. This idea, championed by brilliant minds like physicist David Bohm and neurophysiologist Karl Pribram, challenges everything from the nature of matter and time to consciousness itself.
Absolutely. Our mission today is to take a deep dive into the core tenets of this holographic model. We'll examine the fascinating scientific hints and even some truly compelling anecdotal evidence that seems to support it, all while, confronting the critiques head on.
Right. It's important to look at both sides.
Definitely. This isn't just a theoretical exercise. It's a journey that promises to reveal surprising facts and profound implications, offering new ways to understand everything from how our brains work to the nature of seemingly paranormal phenomena and the powerful connection between mind and body. Get ready to question everything you thought you knew about reality.
The universe as a hologram beyond the obvious.
Okay, let's unpack this. So what exactly is this holographic universe theory that has physicists and philosophers alike, rethinking the very fabric of existence?
At its core, the holographic universe theory proposes that our entire three-dimensional reality, including the dimension of time, isn't fundamentally real in the way we perceive it. Instead, all the information that makes up this reality is actually contained on a two-dimensional surface at its boundaries.
So like the hologram on a credit card, where you have that flat surface but a 3D image pops out.
Sort of, yes, that's the basic analogy. But the key distinction, as Professor Kostas Skenderis over at the University of Southampton highlights, is that in our universe, the projection isn't just an optical illusion. To our perception, it's our entire interactive perceived reality.
Oh, okay. So we can touch things, move through it. The depth feels completely real.
Exactly. We interact with the projection. And this isn't just a brand new thought either. While the idea itself really gained traction in the 1990s, it actually builds on deeper philosophical and scientific dissatisfaction going back further. One of the pivotal figures was David Bohm, who was actually a protege of Albert Einstein. Bohm grew increasingly critical of traditional physics, particularly Niels Bohr's interpretations of quantum phenomena, which he felt were, let's say, incomplete.
Incomplete? In what way?
Well, mainly regarding observer dependence and quantum mechanics. Bohm was searching for an alternative theory, one that could explain quantum weirdness without relying so heavily on the observer influencing the outcome. This eventually led him to introduce the concept of the quantum potential.
Okay, so Bohm's work, kind of stemming from this dissatisfaction, led him towards this holographic model. Can you walk us through his foundational concepts, these ideas of the implicate and explicate orders? They sound incredibly abstract.
They are, but they're central. So Bohm described the implicate order, which he also called the enfolded order, as the deeper, more fundamental, non-local realm of existence. Think of it as the underlying reality.
Okay, underlying.
Right. In this order, everything is profoundly interlinked and interconnected. It's not about separate objects in space and time. It's a realm where meaning bridges the mental and physical aspects. Bohm described it as a boundless flux from which all things pour forth.
Wow. So like a vast hidden ocean of potential where everything's connected.
That's a good way to think about it. A unified field of potential, an undivided wholeness. And then emerging from that is the explicate order.
The explicate. That's our world.
That's our observable, ordinary space-time reality. The world of discrete objects, separate events, the reality we perceive through our senses. It's a projection, an unfolding from that deeper implicate order.
Unfolding.
Yeah, think of it like, well, Bohm used this great analogy. Imagine stirring a drop of ink into a container of very thick viscous fluid, like glycerin.
Okay.
Initially, the ink droplet is a distinct thing that's an explicate form, clearly defined. But as you stir it, the ink disperses, right? It seems to disappear, becoming invisibly distributed and folded throughout the glycerin. That's the implicate state. The information is still there, but it's spread out and folded.
I see. It hasn't gone. It's just distributed.
Exactly. And then theoretically, if you could perfectly reverse the stirring motion, the ink would coalesce back into a visible droplet, becoming explicate again.
That's a fantastic analogy. It really helps visualize how our tangible world could emerge from something deeper and unfolded. So our reality isn't the ultimate baseline, it's a dynamic projection.
Precisely. It fundamentally shifts our understanding. Now, Bohm also talked about holomovement.
Holomovement, what does that add?
Holomovement is Bohm's term for this universal, undivided flux, the continuous process of enfolding and unfolding between the implicate and explicate orders. It suggests that all matter, all existence is interlinked and constantly responsive to information within this dynamic, unified, energetic exchange.
So everything's connected and responding.
Yes, and this is key. It makes the mind's influence on reality potentially viable. It implies that consciousness and the material world aren't separate entities, but rather two aspects of the same underlying, continuously flowing process. The holomovement is the ultimate unknown totality, and any specific theory we develop is just abstracting one part of it.
Okay, wow. So if the universe is this grand dynamic hologram stemming from this holomovement, are there any actual, scientific hints or observational evidence that support such a mind-bending idea?
Indeed, there are. And this is where it gets really interesting beyond just theory. A significant study came out in 2017, conducted by researchers from the UK, Canada, and Italy.
Okay.
They provided what they believe is substantial observational evidence for a holographic explanation of the universe. They did this by investigating irregularities in the cosmic microwave background, or CMB.
The CMB, that's the echo of the Big Bang, right? The earliest light.
Exactly. It's essentially the faint afterglow of the Big Bang, a snapshot of the universe in its infancy, about 380,000 years after the beginning.
And what did they find in that afterglow that pointed towards a hologram?
Well, Professor Kostas Skandaris, who we mentioned earlier, was a lead researcher on this study. It was published in Physical Review Letters, a top journal. He explained that their findings offered as much evidence for a holographic explanation of the CMB irregularities as there was for the standard explanation using the theory of cosmic inflation.
Wait, as much evidence? That's huge.
It is huge. It means the holographic model isn't just a fringe idea anymore. It's now a serious contender, backed by observable data from the very early universe, suggesting our universe could indeed be a large, complex hologram.
That's astounding. So it's not just philosophical speculation, it's lining up with cosmological data. Are there other scientific ideas, maybe more theoretical ones, that also lend credence to this? You mentioned things like imaginary time and entanglement earlier.
Yes, there are other theoretical avenues being explored. For example, physicists Zwengel and Van Ramsdonk proposed an alternative framework involving what they call imaginary time.
Imaginary time. That sounds, well, imaginary.
Yeah, the name is a bit misleading. It's mathematically sound, though. It involves multiplying real time by the square root of -1. What this does mathematically is make time behave more like a dimension of space.
Okay, so it's a mathematical transformation. And how does that relate to the hologram?
In their model, the holographic screen, the 2D surface holding all the universe's information, isn't at the edge of our familiar space-time. Instead, it lives at the end of this new mathematically constructed space-like time dimension.
Right, so the information boundaries in this transformed dimension.
Mm-hmm.
And entanglement, how does that fit?
This is where the interconnectedness really comes in. They propose that the information for our universe is encoded on the ends of this imaginary time plane, and crucially, these ends are linked possibly by a kind of wormhole.
Linked by a wormhole.
Yes, and this linkage exists because the subatomic particles making up the information on these separate ends are quantumly entangled.
Ah, entanglement. The spooky action at a distance.
Exactly, where particles remain connected, influencing each other instantly no matter how far apart they are. In this model, entanglement isn't just a weird quirk, it's potentially the very glue holding the holographic projection together, implying a fundamental interconnectedness across what seems like vast distances in our perceived reality.
This is all incredibly profound. but I can definitely see some challenges here. I mean, philosophically, if everything is a projection, what happens to the idea of an objective world? I saw a critique by Stephen E. Robbins, a PhD, who argued that this implies there's no objective world. This is all just an illusion, and it's all coming from somewhere else. That hits hard against common sense.
It absolutely does. It's a fundamental challenge to our deeply ingrained intuition about an external, independent reality out there. The theory doesn't necessarily say nothing exists in an absolute sense, but maybe more like the room is inside you.
The room is inside me.
Meaning our perceived reality isn't something we passively observe. It's a transformation of an underlying field, actively constructed or projected by our consciousness. The very notion of a purely objective world, completely independent of the observer, becomes problematic in this view.
Yeah, I can see that. And, practically speaking, I've seen some really harsh critiques online, especially about Michael Talbot's popular book, The Holographic Universe. Some people on Reddit called it awful or shitty, trumped-up popular science. How do we square these very serious scientific discussions with that kind of dismissal?
That's a fair point. It's crucial to remember David Bohm's own perspective on scientific theories. He was very clear that he believed all theories are ultimately insights, not absolute final truths.
Insights, not truths.
Right. He thought they are useful and clear within certain domains, but they inevitably become unclear or incomplete when you push them beyond those boundaries. Bohm strongly argued against taking any physical theory as an absolute truth because he felt that leads to what he called the fragmentation of thought.
Fragmentation. And he saw that as a problem.
A huge problem. Bohm believed this fragmentation, this insistence on treating our limited models as the whole reality, is in essence a confusion around the question of difference and sameness. He argued this fragmentary way of thinking is actually at the root of many widespread crises: social, political, economic, ecological, psychological. It disconnects us.
Wow. So his push for the holographic model wasn't just about physics. It was about a more coherent, less fragmented way of understanding reality itself.
Exactly. So while some popular interpretations might be criticized, Bohm's core argument was about moving towards a more holistic understanding, always recognizing the inherent limitations of our current theoretical frameworks.
The holographic brain, our internal projector.
Okay, so we've explored the universe possibly being a vast hologram. But what about us? What about our brains? Are they just passive receivers, or are they actively involved in projecting this reality? This leads us straight to the pioneering work of neurophysiologist Karl Pribram.
Absolutely. Pribram's contributions are just as crucial as Bohm's for this theory. His insights really began by challenging the traditional view of memory. For a long time, the dominant idea was that memories are stored in specific localized areas in the brain, almost like individual photographs filed away in an album.
Like this neuron holds my grandmother's face, that one holds my phone number, that kind of thing.
Pretty much, yeah. The idea of discrete storage for distinct memories. But Pribram wasn't just speculating. He put this to the test experimentally.
What did he do?
He conducted research back in the 60s and 70s, measuring the electrical activity in monkeys' brains while they performed various visual tasks. He was trying to find the specific patterns corresponding to what they were seeing.
And what does he find?
Well, quite startlingly, he found no simple one-to-one correspondence. There wasn't a discernible pattern of electrical activity that directly matched the images the monkeys were perceiving. This led him to conclude that the photographic-like image storage theory just didn't hold up. It was incompatible with his experimental data. The brain wasn't storing literal pictures in specific spots.
Okay, so that's a major blow to the old model. If memories aren't stored like photos in neat little boxes, what alternative did Pribram propose? How does the brain store information?
This is where the hologram analogy becomes central to Pribram's thinking. His core insight, which he refined over decades, was that the brain processes sensory input by performing a mathematical operation called a Fourier transform.
A Fourier transform. Okay, what does that mean in simple terms?
Basically, instead of storing a direct image or sound, the brain deconstructs all incoming sensory information sights, sounds, touches, smells into their fundamental wave patterns and frequencies. It converts the spatial and temporal patterns of the world into a language of interfering waves.
So it's like breaking down a complex musical chord into its individual notes, but for all sensory input.
That's a great analogy, yes. And by doing this, the brain can store memories not in specific locations, but distributed across a vast, holographic-like frequency domain. The information is unfolded throughout the neural network.
Distributed, holographic-like. So unlike a photo where if you cut off a corner, that part of the picture is gone, with a hologram.
Exactly. With a hologram, if you break off a piece, the entire image can still be reconstructed from that small piece, just maybe with less resolution. Pribram realized this holographic principle could elegantly explain how large portions of the brain, like the visual cortex, could be damaged or removed, as seen in some animal studies and human cases, without completely wiping out specific memories or abilities.
Because the information isn't just in one place, it's spread out.
Precisely. The information is distributed, making the system incredibly resilient. Further support came later from experiments by researchers like the David Bohm. They showed that individual cells in the visual cortex don't respond directly to the original patterns of light hitting the retina, but rather to the Fourier translations of those patterns, the frequency components.
So the brain cells are actually speaking the language of frequencies, the same math used in holography.
It strongly implies that yes, the brain seems to be using holographic principles, converting the objective world into this interference pattern domain, and then presumably translating it back into the images and sounds we perceive.
Okay, this is where it gets really wild. If our brains are processing reality holographically, like internal projectors or translators, what does that imply for consciousness itself? There's this really intriguing idea about a specific part of the brain acting like a lens.
Ah, yes, the idea concerning the ventricular cavities. These are fluid-filled spaces deep within the center of the brain. The suggestion, quite speculative but fascinating, is that these cavities might act as a kind of lens.
A lens for what?
A lens through which the interior implicate order, Bohm's deeper enfolded reality, looks out into the explicate order, our perceived spacetime. It suggested that the images of spacetime might actually be projected onto the interior surfaces of the brain's folds, viewed through this ventricular lens.
Wow, so the brain isn't just receiving external data, it might be the screen and the projector interfacing with this deeper reality.
That's the provocative idea. And what makes it even more intriguing is the resonance with ancient wisdom traditions.
How so?
Well, for instance, diagrams from ancient traditions in Rajasthan depict the Ajna chakra, the third eye, considered the seat of clairvoyant powers, right at the anatomical location of these ventricular cavities.
No way.
Yes. And think about the Egyptian Ankh symbol, often depicted on pharaohs' foreheads, signifying life and sometimes interpreted as representing all-seeing power. Its placement often corresponds to that same general area. It's almost as if these ancient cultures had an intuitive grasp of this region's significance in consciousness or perception.
That's a remarkable parallel. It really makes you wonder. So this leads into theories about consciousness itself being holographic.
It does. It connects to what's sometimes called the quantum hologram theory of consciousness, QHTC. This theory takes it a step further and posits that consciousness itself is fundamentally non-local.
Non-local meaning, not confined to my head.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Not confined to your physical brain or even your body. In this view, consciousness might exist as a kind of universal field, potentially everywhere at once, operating outside our usual constraints of space and time. Our brains, then, would act more like complex receivers or decoders.
Like a radio tuning into a broadcast.
A very sophisticated radio, yes. The brain processes information from this non-local field, translating it into the interference patterns, the quantum waveforms that our minds then interpret as our three-dimensional world.
This sounds like it might connect with some ideas from the founders of quantum physics themselves.
It does resonate. Erwin Schrödinger, one of the architects of quantum mechanics, actually speculated late in his life that the quantum mechanical wave function, the mathematical description of quantum systems, might fundamentally be a field of consciousness.
Wow. Schrödinger himself.
Yes. So the QHTC builds on this kind of thinking. It suggests that the mind doesn't strictly reside in the physical brain in a localized way, but perhaps more fundamentally in Bohm's implicate order, that deeper realm where linear time, as we normally experience it, doesn't operate in the same way.
So our minds might be rooted in a timeless, spaceless domain that really challenges everything.
It absolutely does. It suggests our experience of linear time might be part of the projection, part of the explicate order, rather than a fundamental feature of the mind itself.
Okay, if our minds operate this way, processing information holographically and potentially residing in this deeper order, this seems like it could explain some really extraordinary human abilities, things often dismissed as impossible, like photographic memory.
Exactly. The holographic brain theory offers a very compelling explanation for photographic or eidetic memory. People with these abilities don't just recall facts. They often report seeing the page of a book in their mind's eye, almost as if projecting it.
Like they can read it again.
Precisely. There was a famous study in 1972 by Harvard vision researchers Daniel Pollan and Michael Trachtenberg involving an art history professor known as Elizabeth. She could mentally project images of intricate drawings she'd seen years before with such clarity that her eyes would actually scan the image as if she were looking at the real thing.
Her eyes move. That's incredible.
It is. The distributed, holistic nature of holographic storage makes this kind of vivid, almost sensory re-experiencing far more plausible than trying to imagine retrieving a perfect high-resolution snapshot from a specific brain location.
And what about associative memory? You know, when one tiny thing, a smell, a song, suddenly triggers a whole flood of related memories, like Proust's Madeleine.
That's another phenomenon the holographic model explains beautifully. Remember how any part of a hologram contains information about the whole?
Right.
Associative memory works similarly. One fragment of information, one part of the holographic memory trace the taste of the Madeleine can resonate with and bring forth the entire associated network of memories, the whole childhood scene in Proust's case. The deep interconnectedness and distributed nature of holographic information makes this rapid holistic recall much more understandable than a linear file cabinet model where you'd have to search through separate files.
Expanding reality paranormal phenomena through a holographic lens.
So if both the universe and our brains are operating on these holographic principles, this surely has massive implications for phenomena that mainstream science often sweeps under the rug, things labeled supernatural or paranormal. Michael Talbot's book, which you mentioned, The Holographic Universe, really dives into this, doesn't it? It's described as a compendium of the supernatural, the paranormal, and the freaky.
It really is. Talbot compiles a vast range of documented accounts. Psychokinesis, remote viewing, healing, NDEs, and argues that we need to keep an open mind. His point is that these accounts, if taken seriously, collectively challenge the purely materialist paradigm that still dominates much of science.
And the holographic model provides a potential framework for understanding them within science.
Exactly. Instead of dismissing them as impossible or fraudulent, the holographic perspective suggests they might be natural, albeit unusual, manifestations of the deeper interconnected reality described by Bohm and Pribram. They might be glimpses into the workings of the implicate order or the capabilities of a holographically processing mind.
Let's take psychokinesis, or PK, the idea of mind-influencing matter. This seems like a direct consequence if consciousness and matter are linked in the holo movement.
It does follow logically from the premise, and there's actually been serious, rigorous research into this, most famously at the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab, or PEER.
Right, you mentioned Robert John, a professor of aerospace sciences, founded that. Not exactly a fringe figure.
Not at all. John was Dean of Engineering at Princeton. His involvement was somewhat reluctant at first, sparked by a student project that yielded unexpected results suggesting mind-matter interaction. This led him, along with psychologist Brenda Dunn, to establish PEER in 1979. They conducted meticulous experiments for nearly 3 decades.
What kind of experiments did they run? How do you even test PK in a lab?
One of their most well-known devices was essentially a sophisticated random event generator, often visualized like a large pinball machine. Thousands of small balls, say 9,000 marbles, would drop through a pegboard and collect in bins at the bottom. Normally, you get a bell-shaped distribution, most balls in the middle bins, fewer at the edges.
Standard probability.
Right?
Yeah.
Volunteers, or operators, would simply sit near the machine and intend for the balls to fall more to the left or more to the right, or to match the baseline bell curve. They weren't doing anything physical.
Just using intention,
Yeah.
and that would happen.
Consistently, over millions of trials with hundreds of operators, they found small but statistically significant deviations from chance, correlating with the operator's intention. The effect was tiny for any given trial, but the cumulative result over decades was highly significant, suggesting consciousness could indeed exert a subtle influence on physical systems.
So the idea is that consciousness can somehow, what?
Yeah.
Collapse the wave function in a preferred way.
Right.
Project a desired outcome into reality.
That was one of the radical interpretations John and Dunn leaned towards. Unlike Bohm, who generally believed particles had some reality independent of observation, John and Dunn came to suspect that subatomic particles might not possess definite properties until consciousness interacts with them. That consciousness, through observation and intention, plays an active role in creating reality.
Wow, that's a big step, actively creating reality.
It is. They pointed to things like the anomalon particle in physics labs in the 80s. Its properties seemed to vary depending on which lab was measuring it. Or discrepancies in measurements of the neutrino's mass between Soviet and U.S. labs around the same time. They suggested these might be examples of observer effects, consciousness subtly shaping the outcome.
That's fascinating. Now, if mind can influence external objects, what about influencing our own bodies? This brings us to some incredible accounts of human invulnerability and healing.
Absolutely. If the mind-body connection is fundamental within this holographic framework, it opens the door to possibilities that defy conventional medicine. One of the most striking historical examples is Dajo.
The Dutch yogi, the one who got impaled.
That's him. In the 1940s, Dajo performed public demonstrations where he'd have assistants pierce his body, often through vital organs like the heart, lungs, or kidneys, with thin, sword-like objects called foils. And yet, he apparently suffered no significant harm.
No harm. That seems impossible.
Well,
there are films and photos, right?
yes, there's documentation, including X-rays, showing the foil passing through his body. Witnesses, including doctors who examined him, reported minimal bleeding, no signs of shock or infection, and incredibly rapid healing, sometimes within minutes of the foil being removed. From a standard biological viewpoint, he should have died or suffered massive internal injuries.
So how could the holographic model even begin to explain something like that?
Well, the theory might suggest that Dajo, perhaps through intense mental discipline or belief, was able to use a form of psychokinesis on his own tissues. He might have been unconsciously altering the physical interactions at a subatomic level, essentially instructing his body not to react in the usual way to the piercing, preventing hemorrhage, blocking pain signals, accelerating healing. His mind, deeply connected to his body via the holo movement, was overriding the normal physical laws.
That's incredible. Are there other examples of this kind of extreme physical resilience?
There are historical accounts, like the convulsionaires of Saint-Médard in 18th century Paris. These were religious ecstatics, mostly women, who gathered at a tomb and entered states of intense hysteria. While in these states, they reportedly endured brutal beatings with clubs and heavy objects, stabbings with sharp instruments, even strangulation attempts, all without apparent injury.
Seriously, they were being attacked.
Voluntarily, in many cases, they requested the blows as part of their religious fervor. Observers, including physicians and officials, documented their seeming invulnerability. Some, like Marie Sonnet and Gabrielle Muller, even displayed immunity to fire, handling hot coals or standing in flames unharmed. Voltaire famously quipped that King Louis V tried to stop the miracles by closing the cemetery, but you can't stop miracles by royal decree.
How could PK explain that? It sounds even more extreme than Dajo.
Again, it's speculative, but perhaps they were unconsciously using PK to, say, subtly deflect the hammer blows just enough, or to hold the strangler's hands slightly away, or altering their skin's reaction to heat. Their intense belief state might have unlocked these abilities.
And what about cases like Therese Neumann, the mystic who supposedly lived without food?
Therese Neumann, the 20th century German Catholic mystic, is another fascinating case. She reportedly exhibited stigmata wounds resembling those of Christ, which bled regularly but healed rapidly, sometimes even growing nail-like protuberances. But perhaps even more astonishing was her claim of Anidia living for 35 years on nothing but the daily Eucharist wafer, consuming no other food or drink.
No food or drink for 35 years. Was that verified?
There were periods of observation, including one strict 15-day surveillance by physicians and nurses in 1927, where they confirmed she consumed nothing but the wafer and a tiny amount of water used with it, yet showed no signs of dehydration or starvation, and her weight remained stable. How she sustained herself remains a profound mystery under conventional science, but within a holographic view where mind influences matter, perhaps her deep belief allowed her body to draw energy or sustenance directly from the underlying field or drastically alter its metabolism.
These are extreme cases, but they point towards the mind's power over the body. This surely connects to more common phenomena, like the placebo effect.
Absolutely. The placebo effect is a perfect everyday example. The mind's belief in a treatment, even an inert one, can trigger real physiological changes. Pain relief, reduced inflammation, even shrinking tumors in some documented cases.
Like the Kribiosin cancer drug story.
Exactly. The patient whose tumors melted away when given the wonder drug Kribiosin, then returned when he read reports it was ineffective, then melted again when his doctor cleverly told him a new, super-refined version, actually just saline, was available. His belief directly controlled his body's response. The holographic model suggests the mind-body system can't easily distinguish between an external reality, a real drug, and an internal one, the belief in the drug. Both create neural holograms that instruct the body.
And athletes using visualization.
Yes. Soviet sports scientists found that athletes who mentally rehearsed their events showed almost the same patterns of neuromuscular impulses as when they physically performed them. The mental images were acting as direct precursors to physical action. It all points to the idea that our thoughts and beliefs are not just abstract, they are potent forces shaping our physical reality.
Okay, so mind influences matter, even our own bodies. What about influencing or perceiving things beyond our immediate space and time, like clairvoyance, accessing the past or future?
This is where the non-local aspect of the holographic model really comes into play. If past, present, and future are all somehow unfolded in the implicate order, then accessing information beyond the present moment becomes theoretically possible. Consider retrocognition, seeing the past.
Like Stefan Osowicki, the Polish clairvoyant.
Yes, Osowicki was remarkable. Tested rigorously by scientists and ethnologists before World War II, he demonstrated an uncanny ability to retrieve detailed information about past events, often just by handling an object associated with them, a process called psychometry. He'd hold ancient stone tools and accurately describe the long-extinct animals they were used on, or the burial customs of the people who made them, details later confirmed by archaeological findings.
How could he possibly do that?
The holographic explanation suggests the past isn't truly gone. The information remains recorded, enfolded within the cosmic hologram. Osowicki, perhaps through his psychic ability, was able to tune into or access this non-local information, essentially reading the past directly from the implicate order. Our linear perception of time in this view is just one way of experiencing the unfolding hologram.
Are there other examples?
Talbot mentions George McMullen, an ordinary truck driver who discovered he could spontaneously tune into past scenes, particularly when visiting historical or archaeological sites. He could accurately describe ancient structures or events that occurred there, details unknown to him but later verified. It's as if the information is latent in the location itself, accessible to a receptive mind.
And what about experiences where consciousness seems to leave the body entirely? Out-of-body experiences, OBEs.
OBEs provide some of the most compelling anecdotal evidence for consciousness being separable from the physical brain. People report floating near the ceiling, looking down on their own bodies, and accurately describing events or objects in the room or even distant locations, details they couldn't possibly know through normal sensory means.
So the consciousness isn't just in the brain.
The holographic interpretation suggests consciousness creates a kind of phantom double or second body. During an OBE, not a permanent energy replica, but a temporary holographic projection or focus point through which it perceives.
And sometimes these OBEs seem to bend time too.
That's the really intriguing part, what Talbot calls holographic plasticity. Some OBE accounts involve perceiving future events or details. For instance, Dr. Alex Tanis, a well-known psychic often studied in labs, reported OBEs where he accurately described test objects that were only placed in the target location days later.
Days later.
It suggests that during an OBE, consciousness might access a subtler level of reality, perhaps closer to the implicate order, where the distinctions between past, present, and future are less rigid, more fluid.
This sounds very similar to descriptions from near-death experiences, NDEs.
It does. Enders frequently describe entering a realm that feels fundamentally different, often characterized as a holographic reality of pure frequency. They talk about experiencing intense light, feeling higher vibrations, and hearing celestial music described not as sound, but as combinations of vibrations.
Pure frequency, like the brain's processing language.
Exactly like Pribram's ideas, yes. NDers also often report gaining access to vast knowledge instantaneously, like tapping into an infinite library of information, suddenly understanding the universe without even asking questions. This resonates strongly with the holographic idea of all information being interconnected and accessible within the implicate order.
And they describe seeing beings or forms.
Yes, often described as beings of light, or sometimes as thought forms, constructs created by the mind, perhaps composites of past lives or archetypal figures. This aligns with the idea that in these realms, reality is more fluid, more directly shaped by consciousness. It's fascinating how similar these accounts are to the 18th century visions of Emanuel Swedenborg, who described the afterlife as a state where humans are interconnected in a cosmic unity, each a heaven in miniature, and the universe itself a microcosm of divine reality. Very holographic concepts.
If everything is so interconnected in this holographic field, it makes phenomena like telepathy so much more plausible, doesn't it?
It certainly provides a potential mechanism. Numerous studies, though often controversial, have shown subtle physiological correlations between people who are emotionally close but physically separated.
Like what kind of correlations?
For instance, changes in polygraph readings, heart rate, skin response, EEG brainwave patterns, or even blood volume in one person when another isolated person is stimulated emotionally or simply hears the first person's name mentioned. There are also accounts from hypnosis research where deeply hypnotized subjects seemed able to tap into the senses of the hypnotist, tasting what they ate, for example.
That suggests a deep, maybe even unconscious connection.
Exactly. Neurophysiologist Jacobo Grinberg-Zilberbaum in Mexico conducted experiments suggesting that when two people meditate together with the intention of communicating non-locally, their brainwaves can become synchronized. He proposed they create an entangled hyperfield, a unified neural field allowing for direct communication. The holographic model provides a framework for understanding how such entanglement and deep interconnectedness might be possible.
This interconnectedness also seems relevant to the concept of the human energy field, or aura. That's something ancient cultures talked about extensively.
Absolutely. The idea of a subtle energy body or field surrounding the physical body is nearly universal prana in Hinduism, chi or ki in Chinese medicine, nephesh in Kabbalah, and many other names across cultures. They all point to a vital life force energy that underlies and sustains the physical form.
And this isn't just ancient belief. There's been modern research, too, like therapeutic touch.
Yes. Dr. Dolores Krieger, a professor of nursing at NYU, was instrumental in bringing this into a more mainstream context. She studied with a healer named Dora Kuntz, who could apparently perceive and manipulate human energy fields to promote healing. Krieger developed therapeutic touch, a practice where nurses learn to sense and modulate these fields, often without physical contact, to facilitate relaxation and healing. It's now taught and used in many hospitals, based on the premise that balancing this energy field supports physical health.
And Valerie Hunt's work at UCLA actually measured frequencies in this field.
That's right. Dr. Valerie Hunt, a professor of kinesiology, used sensitive EMG equipment to measure high-frequency electrical signals from the body surface during sessions with healers and psychics. She found distinct frequency patterns correlating with different perceived chakra colors and, interestingly, with specific talents.
Specific frequencies for talents.
Yes. For example, she found people known for psychic abilities often showed prominent frequencies around 400-800 cycles per second, while those known for healing might show different patterns. She also noted the presence of complex, seemingly chaotic, but structured patterns within the aura, suggesting it's an incredibly intricate field.
This links back to the idea of clairvoyance being able to see inside the body, the X-ray vision phenomena.
It does. Many individuals who claim to see auras also report being able to adjust their focus to perceive the internal organs and diagnose illnesses, often with surprising accuracy. Talbot recounts the story of Diane, a corporate executive who learned to see energy fields. She looked at a friend and saw her field looked wilted and broken. Focusing deeper, she perceived an intestinal blockage near the spleen.
And was she right?
She was. The friend had no symptoms but went for x-rays based on Diane's strong feeling, and the blockage was confirmed, requiring surgery. This ability suggests the energy field isn't just an emanation, but perhaps functions as a holographic blueprint for the physical body.
A blueprint.
Yeah.
So disease might originate in the energy field first.
That's a key idea in many energy medicine traditions and aligns with the holographic model. If the energy field is the underlying pattern, then disturbances or blockages in that field could eventually manifest as physical illness. The physical body, in this sphere, is an energy construct, no more substantive, ultimately, than the holographic field it's embedded within.
Mind, body, and cultural beliefs shaping our holographic reality.
This idea of an energy blueprint and the mind's influence leads us to another really fascinating area. How collective cultural beliefs and our unconscious minds seem to literally shape physiology and health. The impact seems profound.
It truly is. The power of shared belief systems, especially operating at an unconscious level, can be quite staggering. Consider the example anthropologists observed among the Trobriand Islanders off New Guinea.
What was happening there?
Well, despite engaging in premarital sex without modern contraception, pregnancy outside of marriage was extremely rare. The researchers concluded it wasn't conscious avoidance, but rather that the deep-seated cultural taboo against it was somehow operating unconsciously to prevent conception, a collective belief system influencing individual biology.
Wow. The culture itself acting as a contraceptive, that's a powerful demonstration. And you mentioned something similar with early organ transplants.
Yes. In the 1950s, kidney transplants were highly experimental with very low success rates. Then the first widely publicized successful case occurred, though it was later found the kidney had actually been rejected almost immediately. But the belief that success was possible spread.
And that changed things.
Dramatically. Subsequent patients went into surgery with much higher hope and belief in survival, and success rates soared. It wasn't just improved surgical technique. The shifting collective expectations seemed to play a crucial role in enabling the body to accept the foreign organ. It underscores how profoundly our beliefs, individual and shared, interact with our biology.
This idea that the body itself is holographic, with each part reflecting the whole, seems beautifully illustrated by acupuncture microsystems, too.
Absolutely. Dr. Terry Olison's research at UCLA on ear acupuncture is a prime example. He mapped the points on the external ear where acupuncturists traditionally insert needles for various conditions.
And what did he find?
He found that these points literally form a map of the human body, an inverted fetus shape on the ear. Furthermore, he used electrical devices to measure skin conductivity and found that points corresponding to areas of the body with a known pathological condition, like a bad back or a knee problem, consistently showed significantly higher electrical activity than other points.
So the ear reflects the state of the whole body.
Precisely. Olison concluded this strongly indicates that the body is a hologram, and each of its portions contains an image of the whole. It's a stunning physical manifestation of the microcosm-macrocosm principle inherent in the holographic idea.
Okay, so our beliefs shape us, parts reflect the whole, but what about individual conscious control? What about free will? If our unconscious minds and deeper fields are so influential, where does conscious choice fit in? Some experiments seem to question it directly.
Yes, the experiments by Benjamin Libet and others in the 1980s generated a lot of debate. They measured brain activity, specifically the readiness potential, while subjects were asked to make a simple voluntary movement like flexing their wrist whenever they felt the urge, and to note the precise time they first felt the conscious intention to move.
And what was the finding?
Consistently, the readiness potential in the brain began building up a significant fraction of a second before the person reported consciously deciding to move.
So the brain was preparing the action before the conscious mind was aware of wanting to do it.
That's what the data suggested. It led Libet and others to question the traditional notion of free will, suggesting that our conscious intention might be something we become aware of after the unconscious brain has already initiated the process. Perhaps our feeling of conscious control is, as some put it, a comforting delusion.
That's deeply unsettling. Does Bohm's framework offer any perspective on this? The difference between, say, mechanical thought and true intelligence?
Bohm drew a distinction. He suggested that much of our ordinary thinking, based on memory, conditioning, and reaction, functions mechanically. It just runs on its own according to past programming.
Okay.
True intelligence, for Bohm, was something different. It involves an unconditioned perception, an ability to directly discern what is relevant and appropriate in the present moment, free from the constraints of past conditioning. He believed our brains and nervous systems are capable of responding to a deeper order within the universal flux, an order that can't be reduced to knowable mechanical structures.
So maybe true free will isn't about the conscious ego initiating everything, but about aligning with this deeper intelligence.
That's one way to interpret it. Bohm suggested that if intelligence and material processes both arise from the same fundamental source, the holo movement, then truly intelligent action would be inherently harmonious and fitting, emerging from that undivided wholeness, rather than being a product of fragmented mechanical thought battling against itself.
So if we can align with this deeper order, this holo movement, what does that imply about the power of our intention and mental imagery, especially in shaping our own reality, like our health? You shared that striking personal anecdote from Talbot's book about the clairvoyant in your spleen.
Yes. That was quite a moment for Talbot, who was the host in that scenario. He was having an issue with his spleen but hadn't mentioned it. The clairvoyant immediately picked up on it by looking at his energy field.
And then she asked him something specific.
Yes, she asked, "Have you been yelling at your spleen?" Talbot admitted he had been, frustrated at the problem. The clairvoyant strongly admonished him, saying, never get angry at your body or your internal organs, only send them positive messages.
Wow, that implies our internal dialogue, our attitude towards our own body, directly impacts its energy field and potentially its physical state.
It strongly suggests that, yes. It highlights how intimately our mental and emotional states are linked to our physical reality at a fundamental level, possibly influencing that energetic blueprint we discussed.
Bohm's concept of holo movement seems to provide the theoretical underpinning for this intimate connection.
It really does. If consciousness and matter are not separate, but are aspects of a dynamic, unified, energetic exchange, the holo movement, Then our intentions, beliefs, and mental images aren't just abstract thoughts floating around. They are active participants, configurations of energy within that flow, capable of influencing the unfolding physical reality.
And we see scientific evidence for this in healing, too, beyond just the general placebo effect.
Absolutely. Research by psychologists like Jean Achterberg in the field of psychoneuroimmunology provided remarkable evidence for the specificity of mental imagery.
Specificity, how so?
She conducted studies where people used targeted mental imagery techniques. For example, they might visualize specific types of white blood cells, like neutrophils, becoming more active and powerful in fighting infection. What she found was that through imagery alone, participants could significantly increase the population or activity of that specific type of white blood cell without significantly affecting other types like lymphocytes.
Just by visualizing, they could target specific immune cells.
Yes. It's a clear, quantifiable demonstration of the mind's ability to influence complex physiological processes with remarkable precision. It suggests our thoughts can act like highly specific instructions to our bodies.
That is truly astonishing. So the big takeaway message here seems to be that, as Talbot puts it, we are all potential wonder workers.
That really captures the essence of it. The holographic model implies that our mind-body system at a fundamental level may not strictly differentiate between neural holograms generated by perceiving external reality and those holograms generated purely by our imagination and intention.
So what we vividly imagine can be as real to the body as what we see.
In a sense, yes. The implication is that we possess an inherent, though perhaps largely untapped, ability to influence our own health, physiology, and maybe even our physical form in ways that seem dazzling or miraculous from a purely mechanistic viewpoint. We might have the potential to modulate our immune system, counteract drug side effects, accelerate healing, perhaps even influence genetic expression, all through the focused power of our consciousness within this holographic system.
Philosophical deep dive and critical perspectives.
This entire journey through the holographic universe has been, well, mind-altering. It challenges so many of our bedrock assumptions about reality. But it's important to circle back and acknowledge that accepting such a radical paradigm shift isn't easy, especially within established scientific communities. It bumps right up against the deeply ingrained belief in scientific objectivity.
That's a very crucial point. Science strives for objectivity, but it's practiced by humans embedded in cultures and holding preconceived notions. As many scientists and philosophers of science have acknowledged, science isn't always purely objective. It can be influenced by prevailing religious, philosophical, and cultural prejudices.
And there's often resistance to ideas that challenge the status quo.
Definitely. Dr. Bernie S. Siegel, the surgeon and author of Love, Medicine, and Miracles, made the observation that people often become addicted to their beliefs. When deeply held beliefs, especially those that define our understanding of reality, are challenged, the reaction can be strong resistance, even dismissal of evidence rather than open-minded inquiry.
Even among physicists dealing with quantum mechanics, there seems to be some cognitive dissonance.
Yes, the quantum theorist Fritz Röhrlich pointed this out quite sharply. He described what he called a schizophrenic view held by many physicists. On one hand, they readily use and accept the standard interpretation of quantum theory in their calculations, an interpretation which strongly implies observer dependence, the idea that the act of measurement influences the reality being measured.
Right.
But on the other hand, Röhrlich noted, many of these same physicists, when talking philosophically, insist on the objective reality of quantum systems, even when they are not being observed. They revert to a classical intuition that contradicts the very theory they work with. It highlights the deep-seated resistance to fully embracing the more radical implications of quantum mechanics about the nature of reality and observation.
So if we take the holographic idea seriously, if reality is fundamentally a projection, a shared hologram, what does that actually mean about its nature? Is it just an illusion then? Is anything real?
It's more nuanced than saying it's all an illusion. In what's sometimes termed an omnijective universe, all appearances, the things we perceive, are indeed like illusions in the sense that they are hologram-like images constructed by consciousness interacting with the underlying field. However, crucially, they are illusions based on something that is there.
Yeah. Okay, so not just empty illusion, but a projection from something real.
Exactly. There's a deeper underlying reality, Bohm's implicate order, the holo movement, which is the source of the projection. So our perceived reality isn't fundamentally substantive in the way we think, but it's a valid, meaningful manifestation or unfolding of that deeper, very real source.
This sounds remarkably similar to concepts in some ancient traditions like the dream time.
It connects incredibly well. The Australian Aborigines, for example, refer to the fundamental reality and also the afterlife state as the dream time. This is conceived as a more fluid, formative realm from which the physical world emerges, and where consciousness has more direct creative power. Similarly, texts like the Tibetan Book of the Dead repeatedly emphasize the dreamlike, malleable nature of reality, especially in post-mortem states.
So maybe our waking reality has a similar ontological status to a dream, just a very persistent, collectively agreed upon dream.
That's a powerful way to think about it. A shared, stable projection, but perhaps fundamentally as pliable to consciousness as a lucid dream if we knew how to interact with it at that level.
Which inevitably leads to the ultimate question. If reality is a shared dream, whose dream is it?
That is the profound mystery, isn't it? And different traditions offer different metaphors. The Hindu Vedas and yogic texts speak of the universe as Brahman's dream or Leela, the divine play. Christian mystics might say we are all thoughts in the mind of God. The Kalahari Bushmen have a beautifully reflexive answer. There is a dream dreaming us. Perhaps, in a truly holographic universe, the question itself dissolves.
How so?
Because if the part contains the whole, if we are each microcosms reflecting the macrocosm, then the distinction between the dreamer and the dream, the part and the whole, becomes meaningless, as Talbot suggests. We are all intrinsically interwoven threads in this single vast consciousness, collectively dreaming or projecting this reality into existence. The dream is dreaming itself through all of us.
If this holographic view is closer to the truth, it seems to demand a fundamental shift in how we approach science itself.
Absolutely. People like Willis Harman, who was president of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, argued forcefully for a basic restructuring of science. He believed that science needed to expand its framework to seriously investigate and incorporate phenomena related to consciousness, including psychic and spiritual experiences, which are currently often excluded a priori.
Because ignoring them leaves our picture incomplete.
Profoundly incomplete. Harman argued that clinging solely to a mechanistic, materialistic view prevents us from understanding the deeper nature of reality and our place within it. He pointed out that even mainstream physics, with relativity and quantum mechanics, fundamentally points towards an undivided wholeness, challenging the fragmented, clockwork picture of the universe that dominated science for centuries. It's an invitation to develop a more holistic science.
And maybe this shift is already happening, part of a larger evolution in consciousness.
That's a fascinating possibility. Kenneth Ring, a prominent NDE researcher, proposed that the increasing prevalence and study of near-death experiences might signify an evolutionary thrust toward higher consciousness. He saw it as potentially leading to a shamanizing of modern humanity, meaning more individuals are having experiences that pierce the veil of ordinary reality, accessing information and perspectives from deeper, non-ordinary states, and integrating those insights, much like shamans did in traditional cultures. Many ancient traditions, in fact, speak of a distant past, a golden age, or dream time, when physical reality was perceived as much more plastic, more directly responsive to thought and intention. Perhaps we are, collectively, moving towards reawakening some of those latent capacities, becoming more conscious co-creators within the holographic matrix.
We've certainly journeyed through an astounding idea today, the universe as a grand hologram. We've touched on how our brains might be active projectors in this reality, not just passive observers, and how our consciousness seems deeply fundamentally interconnected. We see how this holographic model offers potential explanations for everything from how memory works to seemingly impossible feats of psychokinesis and clairvoyance, and the incredible power of the mind to heal the body.
It truly does. The holographic model challenges our most basic, deeply held assumptions about what's real, what separates us from each other and the world, and ultimately, what is possible for us as human beings.
It paints a picture where the solid, objective world we perceive is just one layer, one explicate unfolding of a much vaster, deeper, enfolded reality. And our own consciousness isn't just a byproduct of brain chemistry, but an active, integral participant in the very creation of that reality.
It's a radical shift in perspective, suggesting a universe that is far more mysterious, interconnected, and full of potential than we usually imagine.
So the provocative thought to leave you with is this. If the universe is indeed a hologram, and if our consciousness is inextricably woven into its fundamental fabric, what incredible possibilities does it truly open up? For understanding reality, yes, but also for our own potential for healing, growth, and connection.
And perhaps even more fundamentally, if the separateness we feel between mind and body, between self and other, between us and the cosmos, is ultimately an illusion, a feature of the projection, How might truly understanding and feeling that profound interconnectedness fundamentally change the way we live our lives, interact with the world, and relate to each other?
Something truly worth pondering as you move through your day.
You've been listening to The Inner Ascent, where growth begins from within. If today's reflection resonated with you, consider sharing it or revisiting it later. Until next time, stay aware, stay curious, and keep rising.